You think you know what cheating looks like, right? A quick fling, a drunken mistake, a moment of weakness. But here's the truth nobody wants to hear: women's infidelity is a whole different beast. It's not just about sex or a thrill. It's wrapped in layers of secrecy, emotional undercurrents, and psychological games that men rarely decode until it's too late. You sit there, scratching your head, wondering how she could do it, how she could betray you without a single warning, without the obvious signs that you've been trained to watch for. You're not just married to a woman, you're married to secrets. And those secrets? They're eating away at the foundation you thought was rock solid. There's a side to women's infidelity that nobody is brave enough to admit. Unlike men, who often cheat out of pure lust or ego, women's reasons are tangled in unmet needs that run deeper than skin. It's emotional. Psychological. It's about feeling invisible in a partnership that's supposed to be built on trust. You know what really kills the game? The silence. Women don't broadcast their infidelity like some badge of honor. They cloak it in layers of complexity. It's a silent epidemic destroying trust, and men keep ignoring the signs that she's hiding something deeper than just a fling. Why? Because society keeps feeding us this fairy tale that women cheat only when they're desperate or broken. It's not desperation, it's calculation mixed with confusion. The woman who steps outside isn't just chasing a quick fix, she's hunting for something missing in her life, something her husband stopped giving, or maybe never gave in the first place. You could have been perfect, but perfection isn't just about showing up with flowers or paying the bills. It's about making her feel seen when the world is screaming at her to be everything but what she really is. Look closer. Women's infidelity isn't a simple betrayal, it's a complex emotional escape hatch. They don't just want sex, they want connection. Validation. To be reminded they still matter, not just as mothers, workers, or trophies, but as human beings with desires and fears. This isn't a momentary lapse, it's a symptom of something rotting beneath the surface. The woman who cheats is often the woman who's been starving for attention, respect, and emotional intimacy for years. But no one talks about that. Instead, she becomes the villain, the unfaithful wife, the destroyer of homes. And you? You're left picking up the pieces, wondering what the hell you did wrong. Here's the kicker: women's infidelity is more secretive by nature. It's hidden in plain sight, subtle glances, coded messages, emotional distance dressed up as stress or work. You won't find her bragging or making noise the way some men do. She's terrified of being caught, yes, but more terrified of what the truth would do to her reputation, her family, her identity. So she becomes a master of disguise, weaving lies and half-truths so seamlessly that even the most attentive partner can get lost in the fog. You know what really stings? The realization that the wife you trusted, the woman you shared your life with, could be living a double life right under your nose. You could have been perfect, but you weren't perfect at reading between the lines. And that's the truth nobody wants to hear. Men are trained to look for the wrong signs: late nights, missed calls, suspicious texts. But what about the quiet moments? The sudden coldness? The loss of interest in your life, your stories, your struggles? That's the silent scream. The woman who's cheating doesn't often shout. She whispers. She gaslights. She distances. And you're left wondering if you're just imagining things, if you're being paranoid, if you're overreacting. Let me break it down for you. Women cheat because their emotional tank runs dry, and they don't know how to refill it. They crave connection in a way men don't always understand. While a man might seek physical satisfaction, a woman's infidelity is often about feeling emotionally alive again. It's a desperate attempt to reclaim a piece of herself that's been lost in the monotony of everyday life, the grinding routine of marriage, the silent sacrifices made in the name of keeping things together. You're not just losing her to another man, you're losing her to a void she can't fill with you anymore. And it's not just about your marriage. This phenomenon is tangled in a web of societal expectations and personal insecurities. Women are told to be independent, strong, self-sufficient, but also loyal, nurturing, and devoted. These conflicting messages create a pressure cooker. When her needs aren't met, when her identity feels suffocated, she looks elsewhere, not because she's evil, but because she's human. You think it's just about opportunity? No. It's about desperation disguised as choice. The woman who cheats doesn't want to hurt you, but she's terrified of being invisible, forgotten, and unloved. You know what really burns? When you realize that the woman who's supposed to be your partner, your confidant, your equal, is playing a game you weren't even invited to. She's juggling lies and half-truths, navigating emotional minefields, while you're left in the dark, wondering where you lost her. It's a betrayal not just of the body, but of trust, respect, and the very idea of what marriage is supposed to be. And the worst part? Most men never see it coming, because the signs are so damn subtle, so well hidden beneath layers of pretense and guilt. There's a reason why women's infidelity remains a taboo topic, why it's whispered about in hushed tones or dismissed as exceptions. Because facing this truth means looking in the mirror and admitting that maybe, just maybe, you failed to notice the cracks until they turned into chasms. It means accepting that love isn't enough when emotional needs go unmet. That trust isn't a given, but a fragile thread that can snap under the weight of silence and neglect. You know what really hurts? Realizing that the woman who promised you forever might have been searching for forever somewhere else all along. You could have been perfect, if only you'd known what to look for. But no one hands you a manual for decoding the emotional labyrinth of a woman's heart. Instead, you're left guessing, doubting, questioning your worth and your place in her life. And while you're busy trying to piece it all together, she's slipping further away, into shadows you can't follow, into secrets you can't uncover. The woman who cheats isn't just breaking vows, she's breaking the very fabric of your reality, turning the life you built together into a house of cards. So don't fool yourself into thinking women's infidelity is just a physical act. It's a complex psychological and emotional crisis disguised as betrayal. It's about unmet needs screaming louder than reason. It's about feeling alone in a room full of people who are supposed to love you most. And if you don't start paying attention to these silent signals, you're going to wake up one day staring at a stranger who used to be your wife, someone who's already moved on emotionally while you're still stuck trying to figure out where it all went wrong. This is the harsh reality men have to face. Women's cheating isn't just about the act itself. It's about the hidden battles inside her mind and heart, battles she fights alone because saying the truth out loud would shatter everything. You're not just dealing with infidelity, you're dealing with a war of silence, secrecy, and unmet needs. And unless you wake up and see the signs nobody else is brave enough to talk about, you're going to lose her, not just to another man, but to the void that swallowed her whole. You think it's just about sex, don't you? That women cheat because they want something physical, a thrill, a break from the mundane. But that's the easy story, the one everyone wants to believe because it's simple. The truth? It's messier, uglier, and way more complicated. Women's infidelity is a tangled web of unmet emotional needs, psychological wounds, and biological impulses that nobody wants to admit. It's not just about lust, it's about feeling invisible, undervalued, and hollow inside. You know what really stings? The woman who cheats is often crying out for attention and respect in the only way she thinks will get it. Men are wired differently. When a man cheats, it's often about conquest, ego, or momentary desire. Women, on the other hand, cheat because their emotional tank is bone dry. They're starving for connection in a world that tells them to be strong, silent, and self-sufficient, but then punishes them when they show weakness or need. It's a cruel catch-22. So what do? They find someone who listens, someone who sees them, someone who makes them feel alive again. It's not always about the other man's body. It's about the emotional validation she's been denied for far too long. You could have been perfect, but perfect isn't just showing up with flowers or paying the bills. Perfect means making her feel understood, desired, and safe to be vulnerable. Yet, countless men miss this because they're chasing their own version of love, physical, straightforward, black and white. You don't realize that while you're focused on the surface, she's drowning in silence, craving something deeper than intimacy in bed. The woman who cheats is often the woman who's been invisible inside her own marriage, waving red flags nobody bothers to see. Psychologically, women's infidelity is a silent scream for connection. It's about feeling valued not just as a partner but as a person. When emotional needs go unmet, the cracks start to form. She feels unappreciated, unheard, and emotionally abandoned. And here's the kicker, she doesn't always know how to communicate this pain. Instead, it festers, growing into frustration and loneliness until she reaches a breaking point. At that moment, the affair isn't just a choice, it's a desperate escape hatch to reclaim a sense of self-worth. Biologically, women's needs are more complex than commonly understood. Hormones, emotional bonding chemicals like oxytocin, and evolutionary drives all play a role. Women bond through emotional intimacy, through eye contact, through shared vulnerability. When this is missing, the biological drive to seek connection outside the marriage kicks in. It's not just about sex, it's about the brain craving emotional attachment and validation. The woman who cheats isn't just chasing physical satisfaction, she's chasing the feeling of being wanted and understood on a primal level. You know what really breaks the mold? Women's infidelity is often planned, thought through, and emotionally charged, far from the reckless impulsiveness we associate with male cheating. It's a slow burn, a gradual erosion of boundaries fueled by unmet psychological needs. She's not just looking for a quick thrill, she's looking for a partner in crime who fills the void left by years of emotional neglect. And when she finds it, every stolen moment feels like a lifeline, a way to reclaim pieces of herself lost in the routine of marriage. You could have been perfect, but you weren't perfect at seeing beneath the surface. You missed the signs, the emotional distance, the quiet desperation, the subtle disengagement masked as stress or busy schedules. The woman who cheats isn't screaming for attention with loud arguments or confrontations. She's whispering in ways you didn't learn to hear. The psychological need driving her isn't about rebellion or spite, it's about survival of her emotional self in a relationship that's slowly suffocating her. This isn't just theory. It's backed by cold, hard science and real human psychology. Studies show that women's affairs often stem from emotional dissatisfaction, a lack of intimacy, and feeling undervalued. Unlike men, who might separate sex from emotion more easily, women's sexual infidelity is usually intertwined with complex emotional needs. So when she cheats, it's a sign that something fundamental is broken, not just in your relationship, but inside her mind and heart. You know what really hurts? When you realize that the woman you trusted to be your partner, the woman you thought was emotionally invested, has been struggling silently with unmet needs for years. She's been craving validation, affection, and understanding that never came. And instead of breaking down and begging for help, she breaks away into someone else's arms, someone who, at least for a moment, makes her feel alive again. You could have been perfect, but you were blind to her emotional drought. The psychological landscape behind female cheating is like a maze, confusing, intricate, and often misleading. She's caught between guilt and desire, between loyalty and survival. She's terrified of being exposed, yet terrified of living a lie. The emotional dissonance tears her apart, but the psychological need to feel alive and valued pushes her forward. You're not just dealing with infidelity, you're dealing with a woman's internal battle she's too scared to share with you. You know what really shatters illusions? That this emotional hunger isn't easily satisfied. Even the affair itself might not fill the void completely. It's a patchwork fix on a deeper wound, a temporary balm on a chronic ache. The woman who cheats often feels guilt, confusion, and regret, but also relief and hope. It's a messy cocktail of emotions that men don't get to see because it's hidden behind closed doors, whispered in secret, and buried under layers of denial. You could have been perfect, but perfection isn't just about avoiding mistakes, it's about understanding the emotional tides beneath the surface. You need to see beyond the act of cheating and recognize the psychological roots driving it. Because until you do, you're just treating symptoms, not curing the disease. The woman who cheats is not just unfaithful, she's emotionally starving, psychologically desperate, and biologically wired to seek connection, sometimes outside the marriage. So what does this mean for you? It means that if you want to protect yourself, if you want to understand what's really going on, you have to pay attention to the emotional signs. Don't just look for the obvious, late nights, secret texts, or physical distance. Look deeper. Look for the quiet withdrawal, the loss of interest in your life, the subtle changes in how she communicates. You know what really matters? The emotional temperature of your relationship. Is she feeling valued? Seen? Desired? Or is she silently screaming in a way you can't hear? You could have been perfect, but none of this is about blame. It's about waking up to the brutal, uncomfortable truth. Women's infidelity is a psychological and emotional crisis disguised as betrayal. It's about unmet needs so profound that they override loyalty and reason. And if you ignore this, if you keep pretending it's just about sex or opportunity, you're walking blind into a trap you won't see until it's too late. The woman who cheats isn't evil or heartless. She's broken, desperate, and lost in a maze of her own making, one that you helped build by not understanding the deep emotional needs driving her actions. You know what really stings? That the solution isn't simple. It's not about catching her or punishing her. It's about facing the uncomfortable truth that your marriage isn't just about physical fidelity, it's about emotional survival. And until you start addressing that, you're just waiting for the next betrayal to shatter what's left. You want to pin this all on her, don't you? Blame the woman, call her selfish or weak, and move on. But hold on, there's a bigger picture you're missing, one that nobody's brave enough to talk about. Society, culture, the media, they're all playing a dirty game in this cheating mess. They feed women conflicting messages every day, shaping how they think about loyalty, independence, and self-worth. You think she's just making a choice in a vacuum? No chance. She's trapped in a web of expectations and contradictions that push her toward the edge, then leave her to fall. Look around. Women are told to be strong, independent, and free, chase their dreams, own their bodies, live their truth. But at the same time, they're expected to be loyal wives, perfect mothers, devoted partners. These messages don't just coexist, they clash like thunder in a storm. No wonder so many women find themselves confused, torn between who they want to be and who they're supposed to be. You know what really fuels the fire? The media glamorizes infidelity like it's some kind of empowerment, a bold act of rebellion that's sexy and liberating. Meanwhile, the reality is messy, painful, and destructive. The woman who cheats is often caught in this cultural crossfire, told to break free and be herself, but punished when she does. Friends whisper, she deserves better, or she's just finding herself. Magazines and movies paint affairs as thrilling escapes from boring marriages, as if cheating is a right, not a choice with consequences. And you? You're left standing there, blindsided by a betrayal that society helped create but won't admit to. You think this is just about personal failure? Think again. This is cultural sabotage, and you're the collateral damage. You could have been perfect, but perfection isn't enough when the world around her is telling her that loyalty is optional, that self-fulfillment trumps commitment. You think your wife's cheating is a private problem? It's a public epidemic fueled by mixed messages and toxic narratives. Women are caught between wanting to do right and feeling justified in doing wrong because the rules keep changing. Friends encourage her to live her best life, turning a blind eye to the destruction left behind. Social media throws a spotlight on the glamorous side of affairs while hiding the pain, the guilt, the shattered families. You know what really breaks it down? The pressure cooker environment women live in makes them question everything. Is she bad for wanting more? Is she selfish for feeling trapped? Is she strong for taking control or weak for betraying trust? The answer isn't simple because society doesn't give her a clear script. So she improvises, sometimes making choices that hurt everyone involved. And men? They're the ones picking up the pieces, the silent victims of a culture that excuses and even encourages female infidelity while condemning male cheating like some unforgivable sin. You could have been perfect, but society isn't playing fair. It's a rigged game where women are pushed toward independence and self-discovery but punished when that journey leads them astray. The woman who cheats isn't just battling her own demons, she's fighting cultural expectations that are all over the map. She's told to be free but not too free, to seek happiness but never at the cost of her family. It's a no-win situation that leaves her feeling justified in her choices and you feeling betrayed by a world that's stacked against you. Friends matter more than you think. They're the silent enablers or the harsh judges in this drama. The woman who cheats often finds validation among her circle, where excuses are made, stories are spun, and the affair is framed as a necessary escape rather than a betrayal. She's been unhappy for so long, they say, she deserves to be happy. These words sound comforting, but they're poison. They normalize infidelity, turning what should be a wake-up call into a green light. And you? You're the one left wondering why no one stood up for you, why your pain is dismissed or ignored. You know what really stings? The double standards. Men's infidelity is shouted from the rooftops, condemned, and used to shame and humiliate. Yet women's cheating is wrapped in layers of sympathy, excuses, and moral gray zones. The media portrays her as a victim, a heroine, or a complicated soul making tough choices. Meanwhile, you're left with the fallout, broken trust, shattered dreams, and the gnawing question of whether it was ever real in the first place. You could have been perfect, but the world around her told her that perfection wasn't enough, that she needed more than you could give. Let's be clear, this cultural chaos doesn't justify cheating. It explains it. It sheds light on why women sometimes stray, not because they're evil or heartless, but because they're caught in a storm of conflicting messages and pressures. You're not dealing with a simple betrayal, you're dealing with a woman who's been bombarded by society's confusing demands, pushed to the edge by mixed signals, and left to make impossible choices. And you're the one paying the price. You think it's just about your marriage? Think bigger. This is about a culture that glamorizes independence and self-fulfillment while undermining commitment and loyalty. It's about friends who whisper encouragement instead of accountability, about media that turns affairs into entertainment, about social norms that excuse betrayal in the name of finding oneself. The woman who cheats is a product of this environment, and you're the casualty of its contradictions. You could have been perfect, but no amount of perfection can shield you from the cultural storm brewing around your marriage. The woman you know, the partner you trusted, is being pulled in 1,000 directions, caught between who she wants to be and what she's told to be. And until you recognize the role society plays in this mess, you're just fighting shadows. You know what really matters? Understanding that infidelity isn't just a personal failing, it's a symptom of a broken cultural system that glorifies freedom and punishes loyalty. So, when you see the signs, the sudden changes, the emotional distance, the secretive behavior, don't just blame her. Look at the bigger forces at play. Because the woman who cheats isn't acting in isolation, she's responding to a world that's confused, contradictory, and unforgiving. You could have been perfect, but you're fighting against an entire culture that's quietly rooting for her to break free, even if it means breaking you in the process. Friends, media, cultural expectations, these aren't just background noise. They're the fuel that keeps the fire of infidelity burning. And until you start calling them out, until you stop accepting excuses and start demanding accountability, you're going to keep losing. You know what really scares men? That the world around their wives is silently cheering for the betrayal, making it easier for her to stray and harder for him to fight back. You could have been perfect, but perfect wasn't enough to battle the outside forces shaping her decisions. This isn't just about love or loyalty, it's about navigating a minefield of cultural contradictions that nobody warns you about. And while you're trying to keep your marriage alive, the woman you love is pulled in directions you can't control and don't fully understand. That's the truth nobody wants to hear. You think a marriage can just survive a woman's infidelity like it's a scratch on the surface? Think again. The damage runs deeper, far deeper, than you're willing to admit. It's not just about the betrayal itself, it's about the emotional fallout that seeps into every corner of your life, poisoning trust, intimacy, and communication. The woman who cheats doesn't just break a promise, she shatters the foundation you built together, leaving cracks so deep that even time struggles to heal them. You could have been perfect, but perfect doesn't mean a free pass when trust is destroyed. When infidelity surfaces, the emotional distance grows like a canyon, cold, vast, and terrifying. Suddenly, you're not sharing your life with the woman you thought you knew, you're sharing it with a stranger who hides parts of herself behind lies and silence. The warmth, the closeness, the connection, all evaporate into suspicion and doubt. You're left asking, who is she now? And the answer feels like a punch to the gut. Trust isn't a switch you can flip back on. It's fragile, delicate, and once broken, it demands brutal honesty, relentless effort, and time that sometimes you just don't have. The woman who's been unfaithful often carries a heavy burden of guilt, but that guilt doesn't always translate into openness or transparency. Instead, it breeds secrecy, half-truths, and emotional withdrawal. She's terrified of being caught, yes, but more terrified of losing the life she's built. So she builds walls that keep you out and keep her trapped in her own web of lies. You know what really cuts deep? The way infidelity twists communication into a minefield. Conversations become loaded with suspicion, accusations, and defensiveness. You want answers, but she's afraid to give them. You want honesty, but she's scared to reveal the full truth. The emotional intimacy that once connected you becomes a battlefield where every word is measured, every silence deafening. And in this war of words and silence, your marriage starts to crumble. You could have been perfect, but perfect won't fix the emotional scars left behind. The woman who cheats often wrestles with a storm of emotions, shame, regret, confusion, all while trying to navigate the complex aftermath. It's a psychological maze where healing feels impossible, and the temptation to hide behind denial or blame is overwhelming. This emotional turmoil doesn't just affect her, it seeps into your relationship, poisoning the well of love you once drew from. Families don't escape unscathed either. Infidelity isn't a private wound, it's a public disaster that ripples through the lives of children, relatives, and friends. The woman who cheats might put on a brave face, but underneath, the guilt gnaws at her conscience. Children pick up on the tension, the cold silences, the fractured smiles. They sense the instability, even if they don't understand it. And the man? He's left to balance his own heartbreak while trying to shield his family from the fallout, often feeling isolated and helpless. You know what really drives the wedge? The secrecy surrounding infidelity creates a toxic environment where healing becomes nearly impossible. Without honesty, there's no foundation for rebuilding. Without trust, there's no path forward. The woman who's been unfaithful might want to make amends, but fear, shame, and guilt often hold her back. She's caught between wanting to fix what's broken and fearing the consequences of the truth. And you? You're caught in the crossfire, desperate for clarity, desperate for a way out of the darkness. You could have been perfect, but perfect doesn't mean immune to the wreckage of betrayal. The emotional distance, the broken trust, the shattered communication, they all demand more than just apologies and promises. They demand a reckoning, a brutal confrontation with the reality of what's been lost. Healing isn't easy, it's a messy, painful process that requires both partners to confront their failures, fears, and vulnerabilities. And if one side isn't ready or willing, the marriage becomes a ghost of what it once was. You know what really makes it worse? The woman who cheats often carries her own secret guilt and shame, which can make her defensive and distant. She's terrified of being judged, rejected, or abandoned, so she masks her pain with silence or anger. This emotional armor pushes you further away, creating a vicious cycle where both partners retreat into isolation. The very act of cheating creates walls that are almost impossible to dismantle without brutal honesty and raw vulnerability. Families get caught in this emotional crossfire, and the damage isn't just emotional, it's practical. Schedules get disrupted, tensions rise, and the home becomes a battleground of unresolved hurt. The woman who cheats might try to maintain normalcy, but the cracks show in the smallest moments: a missed dinner, a cold glance, a tense silence. The children sense it, even if they can't name it. And the man? He's left to pick up the pieces, often alone, grappling with the question of whether the marriage can survive the storm. You could have been perfect, but even perfection can't protect you from the ripple effects of infidelity. The emotional distance it creates isn't just a phase, it can become a permanent chasm. The woman who cheats might want to heal, but healing requires more than regret, it requires transparency, accountability, and a willingness to rebuild from the ruins. And that's a path few are ready to walk. You know what really shatters the illusion? That rebuilding trust isn't just about forgiveness, it's about understanding the emotional damage that infidelity causes. It's about recognizing that the woman who cheated isn't just the betrayer, she's also a victim of her own unmet needs and fears. This understanding doesn't excuse the betrayal, but it's a necessary step toward healing. Without it, you're just patching a wound that will bleed again. You could have been perfect, but perfect isn't a magic shield against the emotional devastation of infidelity. The broken trust, the emotional distance, and the communication breakdown, they all demand a brutal reckoning. The woman who cheats might want to make amends, but she's often terrified of what the truth will do to her and everyone around her. And you? You're left navigating this minefield, hoping for a way back to the life you once knew. Families suffer in silence, marriages become fragile, and trust becomes a scarce commodity. The woman who cheats carries her own burden of guilt and fear, which often turns into emotional withdrawal and defensiveness. The man is left grappling with heartbreak, betrayal, and a desperate need for answers. The emotional fallout of female infidelity is a storm that doesn't just pass, it leaves destruction in its wake. You could have been perfect, but the truth is, no one is perfect when it comes to surviving infidelity. It's a brutal test of love, trust, and resilience. And until both partners confront the emotional devastation head-on, the marriage remains on shaky ground, teetering on the edge of collapse. You think once the dust settles, everything just goes back to normal? You wish. Infidelity isn't a one-time event you can sweep under the rug. It's a brutal wake-up call screaming that something's broken, not just between you two, but deep inside her, inside you, and inside the relationship you both thought would last forever. You could have been perfect, but perfect doesn't mean invincible. And if you want to survive this, you need to see what's really going on beneath the surface, the unmet needs, the silent cries, the hidden wounds. Here's the harsh truth nobody wants to hear: if you want to deal with women's infidelity, you can't just focus on catching her or blaming her. Because the act itself is just the tip of the iceberg. It's the symptom, not the disease. The real problem lies in the emotional desert your marriage has become, the loneliness, the lack of communication, the unmet needs that pushed her to look elsewhere. You know what really matters? Understanding those needs, not just the betrayal. You could have been perfect, but the truth is, most men aren't trained to recognize the emotional signals women send before they stray. They miss the subtle shifts, the quiet withdrawal, the loss of interest, the fading warmth, and when the cheating surfaces, they're blindsided. You need to wake up and pay attention to what's not being said, not just what's happening. Because the woman who cheats isn't just looking for sex, she's screaming for connection, validation, and respect. So what do? First, stop pretending it's all black and white. Infidelity is complicated. It's messy. It doesn't mean she stopped loving you or that you failed completely. It means something in your relationship isn't working, and if you want to rebuild, you have to start by acknowledging that. Open communication isn't just a buzzword, it's the lifeline that might save what's left. You have to create a space where she feels safe enough to share those raw, uncomfortable truths, without fear of judgment or immediate punishment. You could have been perfect, but perfect doesn't mean silent when things go wrong. If you want to protect yourself, you have to talk. You have to listen. You have to dig deeper than the surface wounds and ask the hard questions. What was missing? What needs went unmet? What pushed her to break the most sacred trust you had? These aren't easy conversations. They're painful and ugly. But they're necessary if you want to move forward. Professional help isn't a weakness, it's a tool. Couples therapy or individual counseling can cut through the noise and get to the heart of the matter. You can't do this alone, neither of you can. The woman who cheats often carries guilt and shame that she can't express, and you carry hurt and anger that won't just disappear. A skilled therapist can help both sides unpack these emotions, confront the raw realities, and start the long, painful process of healing. You know what really separates those who survive from those who don't? Willingness. Willingness to face the truth, no matter how ugly. Willingness to work through the pain instead of running from it. Willingness to rebuild trust brick by brick, knowing it will take time, effort, and probably more heartbreak along the way. You could have been perfect, but perfect doesn't mean effortless. It means committed to the hard work of healing. Empathy matters more than you think. You don't have to excuse the betrayal, but understanding the emotional and psychological turmoil behind it can shift your perspective. The woman who cheats is often lost, confused, and desperate for something she feels you can't give. That doesn't make her right, but it makes her human. And if you want to protect yourself, you need to see her, not just the act she committed. You could have been perfect, but perfect doesn't mean blind. It means seeing the cracks before they become chasms. It means paying attention to emotional distance, not just physical distance. It means recognizing that when she shuts down, it's a warning sign, not just moodiness. And if you ignore these signs, you're setting yourself up for heartbreak. Healing isn't a guarantee, but it's possible. It starts with honesty, brutal, unfiltered honesty. It means facing the raw emotions that come with betrayal, anger, sadness, confusion, and yes, even love. You have to be willing to feel everything without shutting down. The woman who cheats isn't just a villain, she's a wounded person caught in a cycle of pain. If you want to protect yourself, you have to break that cycle. You could have been perfect, but perfect isn't perfect without effort. It's about showing up every day, ready to face the hard truths and do the work. It's about rebuilding something stronger from the ruins, or accepting that sometimes the damage is too deep and walking away with your dignity intact. That decision is yours alone, but don't fool yourself into thinking it's simple. You know what really hits home? That infidelity is often a symptom of deeper relational issues that nobody wants to deal with. It's easier to blame the other man, the affair, or the moment of weakness. But if you want to protect yourself, you have to get to the root. What's missing in your marriage? What emotional needs are going unmet? And more importantly, what are you willing to do about it? You could have been perfect, but even perfection can't fix a marriage where emotional needs are ignored. The woman who cheats is a mirror reflecting the cracks you refuse to see. The only way forward is to look at that reflection honestly and decide if you're ready to face what's really broken. So here's the bottom line: infidelity is devastating, but it's also a call to action. It's a signal that something in your relationship is dying and needs urgent attention. If you want to survive, you have to listen, not just to her words, but to the silence between them. You have to be brave enough to confront the pain and wise enough to seek help. You could have been perfect, but now it's about being real. About being honest. About being willing to fight for what's left or walk away with your eyes wide open. That's the truth nobody wants to hear. And if you want to protect yourself, it's the truth you have to face. If you loved the story, like the video and subscribe.